Mic check 1, 2. There we go. Good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. It has been an exciting, really 24 hours, a day and a half long Manship School Sports Summit. And our last panel here this afternoon is actually going to be our concluding panel. So really excited to end things with a bang. We've had so much fun connecting with our great alums from all over the country, networking with our fantastic and talented students, and of course, all of the great working professionals from all over that we're truly appreciative of y'all's time, your insight, your perspective. Once again, I'm Chad Sabity, one of the faculty members here at the LSU Manship School. Dean Bissell, Dr. Sanders, Professor and Dr. Josh Jackson, and myself really have a great vision collectively to provide more opportunities in the world of sports communication here at LSU Manship. We know that our students are doing fantastic things, entering the working world, continue to produce compelling content, and now in turn helping the next generation. Our afternoon panel is especially unique and really honored to have one of our own Manship students, one of our senior broadcast students, Patricia Caputo, moderating. Patricia is one of our best and brightest, award-winning, but that's not as important as her work ethic and just being genuine and really fantastic representative of the LSU Manship School. So I'm going to quickly turn it over to Patricia to introduce our great panelists here this afternoon.
Thank you. I'm going to use this mic real quick. So I'm a little softer spoken, so I'll move the mic for a minute. But I'm Patricia, so thank you so much. Oh, you know what? This will be perfect. We'll give you this. Awesome. Okay. So I'm Patricia. I'm very excited to be here. But let's introduce our guests rather for today, who have been so nice to come out here and to speak with us and to give us some information about the sports industry. So we'll start from this way down. So we have Mr. Chris Branch, who is joining us here today. He works for The Athletic. And we also have Abby Alonzo, who is the host of Valley Vision, and she's local, just to give you some insight there. And then also Alexis Williams, who is the Senior Associate Athletic Director for the External Relations at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And also we have Caroline Fenton, who works for Yahoo Sports, and she is a host of also on Sirius XM for college sports radio, specifically in football. And then also we have Tyler Batiste, who works for The Athletic with is an NBA managing editor. And then lastly, we have Kennedi Landry, who works for MLB.com, specifically for the Texas Rangers. She's a beat reporter there. So again, thank you all for being here today. Let's just start off with a little bit about LSU. And Caroline, I spoke to you a little earlier on the Proper Room podcast, so I'm very excited. So
check it out.
Yeah, it will be out soon. I think Adam will know. Adam's front and center, and he was editing it, so it's uploading now if you'd like to check it out later. But let's start with you on your experience at LSU. You're a graduate from 2019, and how did LSU and student media specifically help elevate you in your career now?
Yeah, I mean, I think Manship provided me with every single tool at my disposal to be successful and to be able to enter the workforce with already so much experience. We got to talk to some Tiger TV students, and I told them, you might not realize this. You might take for granted what you have, that you are not just a student media member. You are a media member. You're going to press conferences, and you're shooting interviews, and you're clipping up highlights, and you're putting them together for a 5 o'clock newscast, that you get to go to football games. I got to go to Phoenix to cover the Fiesta Bowl and to Orlando to cover the Citrus Bowl. That's not something that students in other journalism programs or other student media organizations offer their students. So I felt like I was already so well-rounded of a media member just when I graduated. I got to make so many mistakes and learn from those mistakes in this building, which is a lot better to do in here than it is to do out there. So Manship provided me with support, mentors, and the experience that I think allowed me to really accelerate my career out of college.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Tyler, you also worked for the Reveille, so you worked for Tiger TV, now you worked for the Reveille, and we were talking a little earlier about how different it was between now and then, and even the TVs you had mentioned, that there was one TV and now there's multiple TV. So continuing on that same question of the experience that you were able to get while at the Reveille here at LSU.
Yeah, I mean, the work ethic and the foundation of what you do is, I think, probably pretty much the same, but just the tools that the students have now at their disposal are just kind of so different. I think when I was coming up, we were still all learning the digital media age, and how to navigate it. The Reveille was printing 5 days a week, which is not the case now. The analytics and the metrics that you use to determine stories and how successful they are. The one thing that really stood out about the newsroom when I was in there was just kind of how open it was. It wasn't kind of, news here, sports here, production here. Everybody was just kind of working together, and I think that obviously we were talking earlier in the panel, at the earlier panel, about the versatility and learning, being adaptable to sports, news, entertainment, and everything. And I think just from like a culture standpoint and just kind of like how you are working with others, it sort of invites that sort of collaboration so that you're just not on your own, doing your own thing, and you can kind of, build that foundation for what you need in the future.
Fun fact, he's still on the Reveille's website, right?
15 years on the student media website. If anybody's listening, NIL, I'm counting.
Chase is there. And now let's go to you, Miss Alexis, because you had a little bit of a different journey. As I was learning about you, you majored in mathematics with your bachelor's degree, and then you decided to go on and get your sports management degree. So can we talk a little bit about your journey and what led you to that decision?
Sure. So, like you said, a little different journey than most up here. Here at LSU, got my undergraduate degree in mathematics, as she spoke of. At the time, I worked with women's basketball. I was a manager, so I was ingrained in the athletic department. Opportunity came up. LSU was recently starting the sports management program, graduate program here. And so they gave me opportunity to the basketball team to stay and be a graduate assistant. And so I got my master's in sports administration. And so from there, I started interning in college athletics and been working in this industry over 20 plus years now. Fortunate enough to be at CU prior to the hiring of Coach Prime, and experienced in managing a lot of things with social and the media surrounding that kind of hire in college athletics.
Can you further discuss that? Because it's true, there was this uproar when Coach Prime came to Colorado, and and the media, like you were saying, and the ticket sales, everything went up. So can you explain that process and everything that kind of went on in the background that we might have not been able to see?
Man, there was a lot. We called it the Prime effect. So our social media following, everything from ticket sales to gear sales to everything, we all of a sudden became top in the country in those areas. The biggest adjustment for us, for those who maybe were following him a little bit at Jackson State, is his son, Deion Jr., they call him Bucky. He has his own media company, Well Off. The difference, Jackson State allowed him to run their social as well as monetize his stuff he was doing. CU, we did not do that, so that was one of my first things. When they came, I had to sit down with him, and we had to decide, would he be an employee of the university, or would he decide to keep Well Off Media and monetize that? He opted for that. We found a middle ground. We give him access to all of our things. He has a contract in place with the university about understanding, not breaking the rules, putting us in a bad spot. So the toughest part has been really for the fan who doesn't understand that from the back end, is keeping the university's brand, but also the behind the scenes that Well Off Media does. So there are two different things but we are unique that we allow him, as well as the pregame show, which is a guy who followed Coach Prime from Jackson State as well. They both have access, the same as all of our media folks. They have field passes, they do all of those things, but at times, right, they can say and make remarks. Booger spoke earlier about clapping back on social and doing things. So there's a thin line. They are not, members of the university. I have to remind our social folks and media folks we can't do those things. So that was a big adjustment. It's worked well. We're unique, again, that he has access and can do that, and we find ways. It has also helped our student athletes. The panel before us talked about NIL, those types of things. He interviews a lot of our student athletes, has helped them create their own YouTube channels where they're able to monetize and talk about things. And then the Coach Prime Show on Amazon, if you haven't watched the documentaries, season 2 documented him coming to CU. That was a lot, right? There's a lot behind the scenes that I don't think people realize. We previewed a lot of what they shot and had to make sure certain things were taken out or, pick and choose the things, right? Obviously, it's TV. People want the things. I think the biggest thing people still talk about is the infamous meeting in the meeting room when he said he was bringing his Louis luggage. We do tours to this day, and people love stepping in that room, and they're like, oh my God, this is where he said I'm bringing my own Louis luggage. So there's some unique things with hiring a coach that already has his own brand. So he has his own marketing agency too. So we had to find a way to intertwine all of that within the NCAA rules and our university policies.
Yes, thank you for sharing. And continuing on the topic of creating your own brand, Abby, Alonzo, you have really taken the reins on that, creating your own brand, especially here in Baton Rouge. So can you speak again about how LSU helped fuel that motivation, but also what you're doing now in the community?
It's funny enough, when I was here, I knew that my path wasn't going to be traditional. I just felt that. I didn't know what it would look like. I took a few detours before coming back here. But what we're trying to build at Culture Media, that's the name of the media company that houses Valley Vision, is innovate the space and storytell in a different way. So how can we connect with these athletes and show their story, build their brand while entertaining and capturing the audience's attention, but also making the community feel included too. So we do these interactive interviews with LSU athletes where it's not a sit-down interview. I'm quite a competitive person, and instead of looking at that as a bad thing, I chose to lean into it. That's a part of who I am. I like to compete. Why not challenge D1 athletes to their sport and interview at the same time? So when we tried that method out, it went really, really well. People love the content. The athletes are comfortable. They're sharing stories they didn't share when they were sitting down in a formal interview, and everybody wins there. So building a brand from the ground up is incredibly difficult, especially when you're not going in the traditional way and you're kind of going against the grain, but it's extremely rewarding.
What's one of the biggest hurdles that you faced when doing this?
There's no playbook. There's no instruction manual on, okay, this is your next step, this is what works. You kind of just have to throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks and not worry about failing. I had a crippling fear of failure as an athlete and then as a young entrepreneur. And I realized I'm the only person in my way because I'm so afraid to try. Who cares if people don't like it? Okay, it doesn't work. Pivot. We figure something else out. But once I got over that fear of failure, a whole lot more doors opened, and I connected with more people than I ever thought I could.
And also, you're a recent graduate here at
Yes.
LSU. You worked for Tiger TV for many years. So even though you're not in that traditional media space anymore, how did working for Tiger TV and even doing stories in class
Yes.
help you and motivate you to do what you're doing now?
So I joked earlier, I struggled with imposter syndrome coming today because I'm the baby on the panel and I wasn't sure I was supposed to be here, but I do know after today I am supposed to be here. Tiger TV, Manship in general, taught me a lot more, and going to what you were talking about, Caroline, a lot more than I thought I needed because I was headstrong and I wasn't going to do the traditional thing, but all of the skills that I learned in that newsroom and in Chad's class still come into play when you're playing around on social media and your storytelling. Those are things that are the baseline. The other thing I talked about to some of the student media earlier today, teamwork. And you're not always going to enjoy the people you work with. That is life. You're going to have to find a way to mutually reach the goal, though. And I learned that here through class or group projects, through working in Tiger TV. You have to figure out how to build a community and how to nurture the culture in a group like that. And that is something that, and then learning the basic skills here and having the opportunities has taken me much further.
Thank you for sharing. And you mentioned social media, and I'll go to you, Mr. Branch, about social media and especially working for a writer for The Athletic. How have you all shifted from what used to just be, okay, you write and that's your job, now it seems to be more digital as well. So how has the newspaper shifted?
Yeah, it's interesting. Listening to all these panelists today, I think in the newsletter space where I am, it's almost this throwback innovation where we're like kind of back at print journalism, just in a different form. Like Tyler was saying, when he and I were at the Reveille, we were producing 5 days a week, and that's just what we did. We printed a paper, but like I write 5 days a week, and I work overnight, and like we have this thing. An email is so this throwback innovation. I keep on coming to that because email is a system that is not going away. Like, say, somebody like Elon Musk or whatever cannot buy email and change it, or whatever you feel about Elon and Twitter, you cannot change email. So there's this like comfort of like, nothing's going to change this. It's almost like a public utility that is limited in a way, but also unlimited potential in another way. And so it's interesting, like social media has not played into it that much. And we have built a big audience without the help of social media, which is unique in this day and age. And I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, no, I love that because you don't hear that all the time. I feel that there's this pressure to perform on social media, and if you don't, some businesses think they're failing. So I love that perspective.
I actually tweet less now because I pour all of my creativity into the newsletter, and I just feel like I have nothing else to say.
Great. Well, and let's finish off here with Kennedi, Landry with the official welcome, but kind of talking about your experience, how you came into my class yesterday and spoke about how you kind of graduated during COVID, and it was a little interesting in navigating that type of world, but working in student media, being part of Manship, but then also going on to work for MLB.com straight out of college. What were the pressures that came with a job like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to say I tweet way more than Branch does, probably entirely too much. But I think, I started working at MLB.com covering the Rangers when I was 22. I was the youngest person at all of MLB.com. I was the youngest person on the Rangers beat, in and around the beat, whether that would be a writer, a sideline reporter, the analyst, everybody. I was kind of the youngest person there. And Abby mentioned kind of imposter syndrome, and I think we all feel that at many points, but especially, graduating college, having to kind of wait while there were no sports were happening. I took a detour to work in news for a few months at The Advocate before getting to MLB.com, and I kind of didn't know what I was doing for a long time. I don't want to say I didn't know what I was doing, because I felt like we've all talked about how much student media has helped us prepare to be on a beat, to be in the professional world, and I felt like I had the baseline, but covering a professional beat is so different than covering colleges. The access is different, the availabilities are different, the amount of time that you spend at the ballpark or the stadium is so different. So not only was I adjusting to moving to a new city and moving to a new beat, a professional beat, I just was really I felt like I was treading water for a couple of years. And on top of all of that, we were on Zoom for my first 2 seasons covering the Rangers. So I couldn't meet any players in person, I couldn't meet coaches in person, GMs, all of those things. It was just really hard to get acclimated to that specific job and situation, especially on a beat like the Rangers. Every reporter has been there for 20 plus years. So I'm not only on my own learning curve, but I'm playing catch up with people, throughout my entire first season, and I was doing Zooms. I didn't have time to create relationships with players and people throughout the organization. So I really did spend about 2 full seasons. I felt like I was treading water the entire time. I mean, I wasn't drowning. I felt like I was competent and I knew what I was doing, but I didn't really feel like I started to pick up steam till last year, where I felt like I was actually swimming, and I could kind of thrive in the job. Took a long time, personally, yeah.
What gave you that motivation to say, I'm not going to give up, I'm going to continue doing this, this is something that I want to do?
Yeah, I think it's just, the job doesn't stop, and the baseball season doesn't stop. It's very long, and I just knew, after each off season, I reset, recalibrate, and meetings with editors and mentors and friends around baseball in the industry. Just what do I need to do to get better at this job, and just kind of go into spring training the next year and try to get incrementally better each time. And even though I know right now I feel very comfortable and confident in this job, much more so than I was 4 years ago, I can still go into next season. Even seeing, what do I need to do to get better going into spring training 2025 as well.
And it seems that versatility is a very big part of this industry. It's something that is stressed here at the Manship School, but I'll open this to everyone. How important is versatility in each of your different mediums?
I'll go. So a little bit more specific to my situation, I wear a lot of hats. I've said this to a few people today, but we're building a media company, and that isn't just content on the front end of being on camera. And all of us up here do a lot more things than the content you see put out. There's a lot of stuff on the back end that a viewer doesn't realize. Production, editing, you have to wear so many different hats and be relatively good at all of them in this industry. Versatility is so important regardless of where you want to go. You may not know. You may be sitting in this room and have no clue what industry you want to go into, what role you want to have. But being able to do a little bit of everything will take you a long way. It's impressive, it's reliable, and it shows that you can handle adversity when things don't fall in your favor or go the way that you expected them to.
And I'll go to you, Caroline, because you worked for ESPN right out of college, and you were doing more of the social media aspect, a little bit more behind the scenes. And then you went off to Nashville, and you were more on the radio, putting together 3-4 hour radio shows. So how different was it to do that, to adjust to that, but then also using that versatility skill to know that you have the confidence that you can go out there in Nashville and do a radio show for 4 hours?
It was night and day different, and I think it's a good reminder that at any point in your career, if you're not feeling fulfilled, you can pivot and you can learn new skills and you can fine-tune those skills over time. You are never, ever, penciled in Sharpie or married to anything if it doesn't bring you joy and it doesn't fill up your cup anymore. I think for me, being able to wear a lot of different hats and being kind of a jack of all trades opened me up to so many new job opportunities. As much as I would have loved to just talk about LSU football all day, well, that kind of narrows my job search. So did a little bit more social media work, did more behind the scenes and production work that brought me into a job into production at ESPN. And being able to connect with a lot of people at ESPN and fine-tune my on-air skills then brought me to a job in radio in Nashville because they were looking for somebody that could help them with their social media and their digital live streams. There's no way I would have gotten a job in a top 30 market, my first on-air job, if I didn't have that social media and production background. So you don't have to be a master at everything. You don't have to go out and get 7 different internships in a semester and all of these different things. But I think it's an important reminder of anything that comes your way, even if it's not the exact job or exact opportunity that you've been envisioning for yourself, try it. Try it. You might love it, and even if you don't love it, you learned how to do it, and it's something that you can put on your resume, and it's how you can sell yourself to eventual hiring managers. So just try everything. Any opportunity that comes your way, take it.
And I'll shift a little bit in terms of breaking news, and this kind of goes for Tyler and Kennedi of how you're dealing with that you both are, in a sense, beat reporters. That Kennedi, you're working for the Texas Rangers, and then Tyler being that editor for The Athletic, but specifically with the NBA. So how are you handling breaking news, but also ensuring that all the information is correct so you're not putting out false information for viewers to read?
I think we all need to remember, I guess, in the social media age that being first doesn't matter. Sure, you would like to break any news, but being right obviously matters way more than being first. And I know at MLB.com, and I'm sure you guys have it since you're run by the Times, but you have to, when you break news or even confirming news, you have to get that confirmed by multiple sources before you can put it into a tweet, before you can put it into a story. And I mean, so that's really the main thing you like to have. And I know obviously in sports you have Woj, you have Shams, you have your Passons, and all these major news breakers. And in all honesty, beat reporters these days don't break all of that much news. These major signings are being broken by a lot of the major news breakers. That's their main job. So a lot of what we do at .com personally is just confirming what a Passon or a Rosenthal or a Morosi or these major news breakers do. I'm blessed and fortunate, and I know you guys are too, that Mark Feinsand is one of the major newsbreakers for Major League Baseball. He works with us at MLB.com. We communicate a lot with each other, and he'll say, oh, I'm hearing this about XYZ with the Rangers. Can you talk to somebody else? And I will, take it upon myself to talk to my sources or, people within the Rangers organization, and, we'll compare. If he has a source and I have a source who say the same thing, that thing probably happening, and things like that. And so breaking news, I think, is a big part of sports today, and especially in the social media age. Again, it's better to be right than it is to be first.
Yeah, I think breaking news is more than breaking news, if that makes sense. Like, it's not. Right?
No, you're
I'm a
right.
wordsmith. Yeah. It's much more than just like, okay, the news happened, but depending on the organization you're working for, there are different layers of coverage. There are different angles to take to analyze a certain situation, to columns to, break down the X's and O's of whatever happened. I think the collaboration, and I think that's something that the Athletic in particular kind of has an advantage with because of the numbers game that we have. We would like to have more writers, but we still have a lot more writers than a lot of our competitors, all of our competitors, for a lot of big time organizations when you talk about Fox or ESPN or something. So the breaking news cycle, it is way more than just the tweet that goes out. It's how do you kind of analyze the news? How do you follow up? I think what's important is because of some of the things that Kennedi talked about building trust with sources and knowing that you're going to multiple people to confirm things, building that relationship and trust with readers and your audience so that even if they see news first elsewhere, if I'm a fan of Kennedi's work and I see something about the Rangers elsewhere, then at some point I'm still going to go to Kennedi to see what she says about it. And building that relationship and that kind of investment from people that you work with. And it's also about collaborating with, different platforms that you may work with, podcasts, audio, newsletters of like how you can get the news out to your various audiences in a different way than maybe you did in the past. So I think that's really important. The breaking news cycle is much more than just when somebody puts it out there and who has it first. It evolves and it's continuing to evolve.
I'd like to piggyback off that a little bit too. Like, to your point, if Jeff Passan breaks news about the Rangers and then it matters for 5 minutes and Kennedi has it 5 minutes later, she says, and like the biggest thing to me is credibility. Like I think about this in my job a lot with my newsletter and then with all of our, the athletic stuff, is that if I say like whether I'm breaking down some strategy or I'm reporting news, like you have to trust that I'm right and that, just that trustability that I'm thinking about. So it's like I don't really care about breaking news. Like it's fun for 5 minutes on Twitter when Shams breaks something, but like it doesn't really matter. The things that matter that the Athletic and Kennedi, excel at is like these big stories of like how this happened. That's what I care about more. That's what we should care about more, especially in this world where media is fragmenting so much. That's such a topic about how many media sources there are. Like credibility is where you win every time.
I do want to say, so to your point about everything that comes after the breaking news matters so much. And the Rangers signed Jacob deGrom, the best pitcher in baseball, a couple of off seasons ago. And this happened on a Friday night in November. So I want you guys to think about, I filed a newsletter earlier in the day that was going to go out on Saturday morning saying the Rangers need to sign a starting pitcher. I am out with my friends at a bar on a Friday night in Dallas. We're having a good time. Jeff Passan tweets that the Rangers are signing Jake DeGrom. I have to call the Rangers GM from a bathroom bar to confirm this news so I can tweet it, and then I have to write it from the bar on my phone so it can go up like immediately. And not only that, I have a whole story written that now has to be rewritten for a newsletter that goes out on Saturday morning. So then I have to get home from the bar and rewrite a second story about how signing Jacob deGrom changes the entire outlook of the offseason for the Rangers. So breaking news, first of all, never stops. If breaking news happened right now, like I would just have to leave this panel to figure that out. And then, those follow-up stories, almost like Tyler said, matter so much more than the actual breaking news in itself. Each signing, each trade, everything has a domino effect throughout an entire organization, and that, those stories that you get from the reporters afterwards almost matter even more than whatever specifically happened.
And I think with everyone's job here is that it's not so much a typical 9 to 5, kind of like you were saying, Kennedi, that things happen and things break and you're up late at night and you're doing things. I mean, I know for Tiger TV, sometimes we're here till 3 or 4 in the morning after a football game trying to get a story uploaded and things of that nature. And sometimes that's the idea, 9 to 5, that's great, but that's just not how it is in this type of business. So Alexis, let's talk about that and your typical 9 to 5. Again, kind of like when Deion Sanders signed him, were you working overtime or just now with the season full in motion and football season and all the attention that's on there, and then soon enough women's basketball season, all of that starting, what does your typical job look like? And is it that 9 to 5 some people think it is?
Right, so I think as everyone up here has said, if you decide to work in sports, whether professional or college, 9 to 5 is not a thing. You are always on, or you need to check your phones. Just be aware, especially if your teams are competing. collegiate level, we always have more than one team in season at the same time. So there's definitely a lot of different things going on. Yeah, when we hired Coach Prime, we were there. When he flew in, a lot of people probably saw that video eventually that posted of him looking at the facilities. That was 2 a.m. in the morning. So yes, we were in what we call the war room as we waited and waited after Jackson State had finished their bowl game for him to fly in. And it was all the things, and as they said, breaking news, people were tracking flights and things were breaking on the internet and we had to wait, you know. And so yeah, you're never off, I guess. And to your point, for us, it's been interesting the last few years, hiring Coach Prime for football not to overshadow, I guess, all our other sports. So you mentioned women's basketball. They've had, our women's basketball team had 2 back-to-back Sweet 16 appearances, battled LSU, tough game for me. So it's tough, right? So you have to find that balance of how to make sure they're important and feel the love from local media or social teams, because it's easy at that collegiate level for student athletes to be like, well, why does football get all these tweets, or why are this many media people at their press conferences and nobody's at ours? So us advocating for the other sports and making sure, you know, Coach Prime, when he initially came, his daughter was on the basketball team. So he showed up at a couple of games, and that was a deal. And how do you manage that? And so there's a lot of it, but you are never off, because every team always has something breaking, especially on the college athletics piece. Student athletes are doing things, or records are being broken. Like, it's just different things are always happening.
And let's continue on that topic of women's sports, and for you, women's basketball at the University of Colorado. And what has been the impact of that, especially over the last few years with just the rise of women's basketball or women's sports in general?
Yeah, it's been great. I'm fortunate. When I was here, I worked for LSU's Hall of Fame basketball coach, Sue Gunner. She's there's a picture of her on my desk. They got me into working in sports. And then as I worked at Colorado, also another Hall of Fame women's basketball coach, Seal Berry. So I got to have 2 mentors that really advocated for women's sports. So I think a theme across a lot of these panels for everybody in the room, especially the women, I wish when I was sitting in your chair we had this kind of opportunity to network. Also do your research. There are a lot of professional organizations for women, or just being in sports as well. They have student memberships. They have mentor programs through that. You can find opportunities to find somebody that identifies how you identify to help you navigate this space. A lot of times it is do the work, do your job right, but a lot of times it is who you know. They all talk about the different networks, who they know, and somebody calling, putting in a word for you always goes a long way. But yeah, it's been great to see the rise of Colorado women's basketball. Again, a big thing for them, the first game of the season after LSU women won the national championship, Colorado LSU women matched up in Las Vegas for a non-conference game, and Colorado won. So that kind of started that trajectory of the success of that program. Jalen Sherrod graduated. She's on the New York Liberty. She just won the national championship, but just left Colorado playing for us. It's all right for me working on that college athletics piece side of it. I like that. I get to also meet the student athletes and mentor them. She FaceTimed me from the court celebrating that she won a national championship. So seeing the players and on the admin side is a lot. There are not a lot of females in college athletics, pro or otherwise, so it is good to be up here with 3 other women on panels. Many times it is just males. It is very male dominated, so keep doing the job. She mentioned imposter syndrome. It will happen, but stay the course, find mentors, keep working hard. There's a spot for women in sports too. So don't be discouraged that you don't see a lot of people that look like you, but it's been great. Women's soccer and basketball are on the rise, and it's just exposing women's sports all together.
I'm from New Jersey, so I was very happy about that Liberty win. But Abby, let me ask you more about women's sports a little bit, because being here in Baton Rouge, gymnastics have won a national championship, women's basketball has won a national championship. So as someone who is going out there and interviewing athletes, how are you balancing ensuring that it's not just football players or men's basketball players, but you're bringing in the women too, and the soccer players and the baseball, the softball, all of that?
Something that when I first came in, we talked about highlighting the smaller sports, and not just the women's sports, but golf. We did an interview with Lance Yates, and he's an incredible kid, and he's got a great story that nobody knew about because nobody paid attention to golf. And I think the underlying purpose and what drives me and my team to share those stories, everybody should feel heard. And what we like to do is build platforms and help people tell their story. So yes, while the analytics and the views tend to be better when we do baseball and football interviews, sometimes there's more purpose and it's better storytelling when you sit down with Kaya Johnson in the gym facility, or you grab the Tiger Girls and learn their dance after the national championship. People aren't gravitating towards the smaller sports or the smaller athletes because they don't show up on social media with the likes, and that doesn't pay and that kind of stuff. But coming back to what is the end goal here? Why am I doing this? It's not for money and it's not for views on social media. It's just storytell and to share purpose with other people. So when you keep that in mind, it kind of organically drives you to be able to share those stories and shed light on the smaller athletes and programs.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think kind of like we were saying that women's sports, it's something that's newer. It's always been around, but the idea of it is newer, that people are like going back to the New York Liberty. I mean, that was almost sold out. There were so many people there, and that's something that you couldn't say 10 years ago. And I think that especially these medias, as podcasting and also social media comes out, there's more opportunity for these sports to get the attention that they've deserved for so long. But to continue on, let's talk about the networking aspect of everything. And again, I'll kind of open this up because I know everyone has different paths, right, and different ways that they've been able to get the jobs that they're currently in. But I'll start with you, Mr. Branch. Just how important is networking and ensuring that might help you get a job somewhere down the road, the people that you know?
I mean, my whole career is because of networking. I'll tell you that. I mean, you know, Tyler Batiste and I met at the Reveille. We've worked 2 other places together. The two internships I had in college, one of them translated into a job covering Major League Baseball right after college. The network that I have from the Manship School specifically has been just an incredible thing. And it honestly, in a very roundabout way, led me to my job today. Like a friend of a friend I started a newsletter with. And it was good for a while. And then I was like, okay, I'm done with that. I was out of journalism. Somebody read it with The Athletic. I was hired as the first newsletter writer at The Athletic. And now we have 8 newsletters and this thriving industry. And I would have never expected to be here without my connections that I made in these halls and in the basement over there.
And I'll ask you about your journey, how you're from Missouri, as you were talking about, and then you've gone to LSU, Connecticut, and now Nashville. So did you have to apply for a lot of these jobs? Or what ways did you get these jobs? Did you know people?
Yeah, I can say the exact same thing. Every opportunity that I've gotten in my career, and even every opportunity that was afforded to me that I didn't take, was because of people that I was connected with, and a lot of them I met right here. So don't underestimate that there are some very important and powerful people, not even just people that are working in the workforce, but the people that are sitting next to you. I mean, I've been friends with Kennedi since we were, itty bitty at LSU, and now I can say that she is paving so many paths and doing such a wonderful job at MLB.com, and that's somebody that I consider a friend for life. That's
she's doing better.
You know what? Thank you. But so I started my career at ESPN, and I decided I wanted to pivot, and I got an opportunity doing radio in Nashville because of somebody that I connected with at ESPN. I got my job at Yahoo Sports because somebody that I worked with at ESPN came over to Yahoo Sports. We were connected on social media. He saw some shows that I tweeted, and he thought that I would be a good fit. That's how simple that it is. I got an opportunity at SiriusXM because I went on a Baton Rouge football show at SEC Media Days, and they liked me, and they passed me along. That's kind of how small this industry and this world can be. I know when I was sitting in your seat, it was not that long ago, I promise, it wasn't that long ago. It just felt like this industry and this world was so unattainable, and it was so big, and it was so intimidating. But I can assure you it's really small. Any of us up here are part of your network and part of your connections, and don't be intimidated by the word networking, because it can feel incredibly intimidating. It can be as simple as striking up a conversation with somebody in the press box at an LSU football game. It can be as easy as reaching out to someone in Twitter DMs, on LinkedIn, as just, hey, I really like what you do. I'd love to hop on a phone call, grab coffee, get on a Zoom, and just talk about you and your path. It can be as simple and as easy as that. But if there's anything that you take away from today, I think we can all agree that the most important tool in your toolbox is the people that you know.
And Kennedi, you were saying yesterday about how you were having coffee over Zoom with those at MLB.com because with COVID, the plans didn't go as you had wanted. So talk about that networking aspect of getting that job, but then the plan's not working out, and then kind of having to pivot and do other things to stay connected to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody a couple minutes ago mentioned those organizations that we have. I was a member of the Association of Women in Sports Media when I was in college and part of the student membership. That's how I got my internship at MLB.com. That, again, unfortunately never happened because COVID canceled baseball that summer of 2020. But pretty much throughout that entire summer when we were all locked in our houses, I reached out to a few of the editors, the people that would have been my bosses at the internship, and just we had coffee over Zoom. Talked about myself and my goals. I talked to them about what they were doing at MLB.com, what the jobs are like, whether that was a beat reporter or a producer or just a regular backup reporter. What about the variety of roles that they had there. So when a position opened up to be a backup in Chicago, then they called me, just, hey, would you like to, be hired for this job? It was not like even an open application. They were just like, we really liked you. We wanted you to intern, and this is a great opportunity to get your foot in the door to, be a backup reporter, filling in for the Cubs and the White Sox in Chicago. Because of COVID, I never actually ended up moving to Chicago. They told me to wait off until the regular season started. And then the Rangers beat reporter retired a few months later, and they said, hold up, don't move to Chicago yet. Move to Dallas instead. And that's when I, took over the Rangers beat in 2021. So I look back at those, I reached out to get coffee with these people over Zoom, which is something that, we can still use Zoom today in a variety of situations, but we can also, get coffee in person. If you live in, if anybody here, if you happen to live in like a Dallas or whatever, reach out to somebody and say, hey, I'd love to get coffee with you when I'm in town or something. I've had interns reach out when I'm, all over the country, and just, I'll get coffee with somebody in Denver because they have an internship here, and they would just love to sit down and chat. And I think that goes a long way with so many people within this industry, just, to take that initiative and how build up that kind of networking Rolodex, I guess you would say.
And Tyler, I'll kind of ask you the similar question on the topic of networking and how people should reach out. What's the best way to do it? Is it like over Zoom, kind of like you were saying, but also connecting with people? And what would be the best way to reach you, for example, that if someone's looking to get into this industry and looking for advice, what's the best way to go about that?
Yeah, I think, Twitter, LinkedIn, email, I think all of it is beneficial. Really depends on the person. I think as someone in a managerial position like myself, you kind of can't be picky about, I'm not going to look at my LinkedIn, but I'm only going to look at Twitter or whatever, because people just access you different ways. I think the networking aspect, again, you can't be shy. I was saying on the earlier panel that the first internship I got out of college was because I went up to someone who was on a panel like this and introduced myself, and ended up interning, and then 7 years later ended up back in Pittsburgh working for them because I wasn't shy about just saying, hey, this is who I am, this is what I like to do. Great talking to you. Hopefully we can keep in touch. And that person is still someone I, message with and communicate with every now and then. The networks they're just, I don't want to make it sound like everybody only gets jobs because of the people they know. Like it gives you a leg up for sure, but like I don't want anybody to think that, if you're really talented but you don't know anyone, that doesn't mean you're not going to get a job. You know what I mean? I think you should just kind of have all those tools in your toolbox. And yeah, like kind of what Chris said, the at least at our time, the director of student media at the time, his best friend was the executive editor of a newspaper in Delaware, which is how Chris got an internship. We had a pretty consistent pipeline every summer, sending 2 or 3 people there. Future LSU interns or LSU interns after I was already working there came and, you know, help them get internships. Chandler Rome that's how I know him, because he interned in Delaware while he was a student. And I said, oh, an LSU guy. I guess I'll talk to him. And that networking, again, it's always a couple of degrees of separation between people. So it's so important, and it's really important to keep that importance and keep that focus right now and not wait until, you know, after you graduate and you're in the workforce.
Yeah. And Alexis, I'll ask you the similar question of networking that looks a little bit different on your end. So what's the best way for students who maybe want to be a future athletic director, get into something with sports management, to not only get involved, but also to connect with those who are in the industry?
Right. On the college athletics side, not a whole lot different than what they said, right? Reach out to someone, but also you guys have a great athletic department right next door. So reach out to folks there and try to intern there, or, you know, there are other places you can meet people. The organizations, as she mentioned, are very important for students. Again, all these professional organizations, they offer mentorship programs for undergrads or grad students, as well as you can find internships. But LinkedIn, Twitter, a couple of people I've ended up mentoring, or to his point, hiring as an intern, is someone that reached out to me on LinkedIn. Hey, do you have a few minutes to talk? I want to learn more about the industry or your path. But communications, especially this day and age, the growth of social media in the college space is very important, because what used to be college has really changed from sports information, and now they call it communications. It was more stats and just writing the recaps and the stories, to now they need them to also do social media and short videos and YouTube and all the things. So we in college athletics are always looking for student interns to help. At CU, it grew, obviously the interest grew a lot once we hired Coach Prime, but we work closely with our communications department, much like Manship on CU's campus, and almost all of our interns are from that school, and they get to experience great things, like she said, from bowl games to being on the sidelines at football, but we also make sure they cover our women's sports too. We make sure that they cover the Olympic sports. A lot of times for us, those sports get lost in behind basketball and football. So.
When you're looking to hire someone, what is the biggest thing you're looking for in a future employee?
Hard work, and I think some people spoke to it earlier, versatility. You have to be able to change, be able to change as things change, and things happen overnight and quickly, so you have to be okay with that and not let that throw you off your game. A big thing for young people, if you do not know, please ask. I think everybody up here would say that. So you're there as an intern and a student to learn. We understand that. We want you to be good, but please ask. There's nothing wrong with asking. I think we'd rather you ask us to help you prioritize an assignment, or is this right, than you doing the wrong thing and something going out incorrectly because you didn't ask for assistance. So be okay to ask.
Thank you. And we do have a few minutes left, so I'll open the floor to questions. If anybody has a question, feel free to raise your hand and call on you. Go ahead. Sorry. It's like, I'll get up there. Mackenzie right here in the front. Thank you so much.
Kennedy, this one's for you. Being a male-dominated, obviously, place, and obviously being in the MLB, it's not easy being a woman. How do you navigate the judgment and, I guess, the imposter syndrome that can come with it, and how have you handled that?
Yeah, I think I talked about this to one of the classes yesterday, but I'm, a black woman in baseball, which is even more rare than just a woman, and I'm one of the, I think, only black women currently on a major league beat right now. But I think the Rangers have a really good culture around this organization that I've never felt uncomfortable. We're in the clubhouse twice a day, every day. I'm around these players, I'm around these coaches all the time. One of the Rangers' third base coach came up to me my first year, and he was like, "You tell me if any of these guys make you feel uncomfortable. Like, I'll handle it if it comes to that, I need you to let me know." And that's, I think, I'm blessed, and I know it's not like that with every team across Major League Baseball, but I'm really blessed with the team I get to work with, that they have a good culture that, makes it comfortable for me and other women to work around this team. Like I said, it's not like that everywhere, and I've heard, horror stories from, even within the last few years about how other clubhouses and maybe players and teams kind of act in their clubhouses. It's not the same as the Rangers. So, like I said, I'm very blessed with that. And imposter syndrome has kind of been a, theme today about, we've all talked about it a few times. And I think one thing that I've learned these last few years is that, you may feel it every day. But I remember that I know what I'm talking about. I know baseball. I show up every day and I watch these games and I look at the stats and all of these analytics, and I know what I'm writing, and I know my stuff, for lack of a better term. So everybody feels that sometimes, and you see all of the, like I said, Evan Grant is a really good friend of mine. He's been on the Rangers beat since before I was born. And he's been doing this forever. And sometimes I just what am how do I even catch up to that? And I don't have to catch up to him. I'm just, doing the job that I need to do every day as best as I possibly can. And I think I'm doing that. I try to. And it's working pretty well, I'd say.
I believe you had a question as well.
First off, thank you guys so much for being here. It really is always an honor to have such esteemed guests. Alexis, this one's for you. You were talking about the basketball aspect of Colorado and that kind of being the forethought after Dion. But with Cody Williams, Tristan Da Silva last year, your players with the Liberty, and Travis Hunter and Shadur obviously leaving after this season. How do you, as an athletic director, and how do you manage those big stars leaving, and how do you build your brand back up and keep it consistent? You'll still have Coach Prime, obviously, but the players are a big part too. So,
He shook his head. We hope.
There's a lot of certainty there. I don't know.
We're working on that. We're trying to work on keeping Coach Prime. College athletics in general is changing. Transfer portals, the house settlement. If you plan to go into college athletics or cover it, please read up on the house settlement. We have to equip our coaches, try to really encourage our donors to give, because that is the way college athletics is moving towards. So we really try to educate our coaches, make sure they have the resources they need to recruit against other places that, it might be hard. Our basketball coaches, both the Tad Boyle and J.R. Payne, pride themselves in, maybe not always, Cody was an exception, 5-star. They don't always recruit 5-stars, but they do great at getting a 3-star and developing them. Derek White just won the national championship with the Celtics. Tad recruited him from he was playing up the road at a D3 school, right? But he came to CU, became the player that he is. So Jalen Sherrod, same thing. She didn't have another D1 offer when she came to Colorado. So they both do that, and they're both good people. So some kids still like that, or their parents do. But now, yes, it is becoming an arms race on the college side. So we have to make sure that people like the black and gold, still like CU, maintain our brand. But it really is becoming about making sure our coaches can recruit against other big programs. As recruits now, that's one of the first questions: how much money will I make? So.
Hi, so I had a question about the job hunt when you're initially trying to find a job out of college. It seems like now when you're looking for an entry-level position, you apply for 100 and maybe you get one call back, and then you get that one call back and you start working on stories, and then your editor says, well, that story you've been working 12 hours on every day, I don't really like it, and then it gets tossed aside. How do you find that sense of perseverance to continue just in the field when you feel like kind of the odds are stacked against you, especially when you're first starting out?
I'll say for me, years ago, even I was in that same spot, right? I had my master's, and I thought, surely I'll get a job. And to your point, hundreds, and you get turned down. I took an internship again. I mean, if this is what you want to do, I think sometimes you'll find there are several people who did multiple internships to finally get a full-time job. It is tough. I get that, but I don't know if anybody else's experience as far as that, but to their point, once you get that first job, the 6 degree of separation of people knowing people and being able to help you or make a phone call, even if it's just to help you get the interview, then it's on you, right? So, but that helps, but it is tough. Everybody wants to work in sports now. So do the work. Yes, it is sometimes discouraging, but hang in there. That's the best I can tell you is, yeah, I took an internship with a master's, and my first job was not making a lot of money. So, but I did it to get the experience, knowing that eventually I'll get this experience, I'll meet people, and get to where I am now. Born and raised in the South, I think all of us up here have relocated somewhere. I didn't initially want to go live in Colorado. I'm just being honest. That's culturally, that is very different. I shared with a friend earlier. I said I didn't realize how much Southern hospitality was a thing until I moved somewhere it's not, you know. And so, but that's part of it, right? That was a professional move. People ask me all the time, and yes, I took that job, and Colorado football was struggling. You know, we made a bowl game in 2020 because you only needed 4 games to make a bowl game, right? Next year we're 1-11, fired a coach, but then we hired Coach Prime, right? So it works itself out. So hang in there and be willing to relocate. Sometimes don't put yourself in a box of, I only want to live here in New Orleans or in Baton Rouge. Like, be okay to relocate.
I would also say that, like, the supply and demand of sports jobs is just not. There's the demand is way up and the supply is not out there. So you have to be open to, we were talking about being adaptable and versatile earlier. Like Kennedi said, like, she started doing non-sports at the Advocate, which I'm sure was not part of her plan, but you want to get your foot in the door to gain that experience. And then hopefully, you know, if you really want to do sports, you can kind of pivot back in there. So I just would suggest, like, being open to that. I know if you're, like, trying to identify a sports job, you got to sometimes just look elsewhere again to just kind of get your foot in the door and trust yourself and your own work ethic that you'll be able to open that sports door when the time comes. So
I do want to add to that too, because my journey was weird, where I was in sports and then I was out of sports for like 5 years, and I desperately wanted to be back in sports, but I had a good job, I was doing fine, but I really wanted to do it again. If there's an avenue for you to make your own stuff and publish it yourself and really work on it hard, like, I would really encourage you to do that. I created my own newsletter. I messed up so many times, but I did it from soup to nuts, as they say. I did the entire thing. And now I have been empowered to be where I am because I just did it by myself, you know? Because, the way that all the tools available to you that we did not have when we were growing up, you can publish your own story right now if you wanted to somewhere. Send 50 people the link and say, like, here's my stuff and I've written about this before and it's on the internet. Like, we would have to compile our paper clips together of articles, and like, somebody has to publish that, you know, and we didn't have that power. So I would encourage you to take it as much in your own hands as possible too, with all the tools available.
And that struggle, that grind, like, that's real, and it's hard, and you might go through a couple of years where you feel really lonely and you might not be making a lot of money. And I don't say that to scare anyone. I say that because if you find yourself in that position, just know that that's normal and you are not alone in that, and that you're gonna have a couple of difficult years, but the struggle also continues. Or maybe I don't want to say the struggle, maybe like hardships are things that you're overcoming. Like, I'm in a place now where I feel a little bit more established in my careers. I still have days where I feel lonely. Like, I still have days where it's like, it's really hard. That you don't graduate from that. Like, you don't grow out of that. But there's also really great parts of it as well. And even early on in your career, if you're not making a lot of money, those are really formative and important years where you make great friends, you make great experience, you can, tell stories about that time early in your career for the rest of your career. So as long as you continue to remind yourself why you're doing it, and you're having a really fun time doing it, regardless of some of other things that you have to overcome, like, that's the key.
You also learned how to cook on a budget.
Oh, yeah.
We have time for one more question.
Over here.
Hello. First off, I just wanted to thank you for all being here, but I also wanted to mention that I'm speaking from an athlete at Southern University, and I was speaking on how, because basically I'm an athlete, and also outside of that is I have my own videography, photography brand. So how can I best monetize my videography and photography brand while being an athlete and monetize both?
I would say try to feature other student athletes on your, the use your skill sets to help other student athletes, especially in this NIL time of helping. There are a lot of athletes with their own podcast, different things. They're looking for graphics to be made to help promote themselves. So use your skill set for that. You can try to promote yourself. I think it's, for student athletes still in college, you have to be careful on making sure your university is okay with their mark being in things that you do. So you have to be very careful on, if you are promoting yourself or a fellow student athlete, unfortunately, I wouldn't recommend having on Southern University's your uniform or a trademarked logo that the school uses. That's where it gets tricky, depending on the school, how much they watch. We have way more eyes now that Coach Prime is there, so we have to be careful with that. And a lot of the NIL places, they do pay the licensing fee, or you can pay the licensing fee to do it, and then you obviously, the school will get a piece of it, but you will too. But I think also, reach out to some Southern alums, interview them, things like that to boost your following and that'll help you with your brand. Put yourself out there. But I would say start talking to other athletes on other teams, not the sports you're in, and just try to show that versatility and reach out, and that puts you out there, get you out there that, hey, he can do this, or this is his brand. So do that. Travis is very quiet, Travis Hunter. That is, he doesn't do well or doesn't like, let me say that, talking to traditional media. But if you've watched his podcast, he's very relaxed and talks. Like he's great in his element, right? What makes him comfortable in his onesie things, and he likes to do the TikTok dances. But we have a kickoff luncheon, and they want to question him, and he's like, he's passing the mic, to Shador. So you have to find where you're comfortable and kind of boost your brand. Obviously he got a lot of help with his play on the playing surfaces, but people were concerned initially, like, he's not doing media, people don't know who he is, and he started his own podcast, and now people are seeing he is a great kid. And by the way, anybody curious, he is a genuinely great guy. What you see on that is who he is. So he's great. But I think try to do that, talk to some other players, other things, and help boost. It's still boosting you, but it's also showing your skill set.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming today, and thank you to our wonderful panelists who decided to join us today.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Like most of us said, thank you so much for coming out. We greatly appreciate all of you.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's have a round of applause for Patricia as well. Thank y'all very much.
You did a great job.
Thank you to all of our panelists, all of our support, and that will officially conclude this year's Manship School Sports Summit, y'all. What an action-packed 24 hours. It was amazing, all the great different panel discussions. Be sure to check out our student media and all of their respective works and websites. And of course, big things coming our way here at the LSU Manship School. Thank y'all very much.
He told me to bring you, so.